So Josh, how did you? Because you've been in social media now, helping job seekers for a number of years. But really, what I'd love to know is how did you get to this point in your career where you're helping job seekers?
It's been about 7 years. 2009 is when I got started doing this. So I'd like to try to define what a straight career path looks like because I've never been able to find one. And a lot of people I talk to just what is that path from college to you get a job, you get promoted, you get the pension, and you retire. That's long gone. And so if anyone defines the circuitous career path, I'd be a good example of that. Having done undergraduate degree, tried to do other things like travel to Japan and teach English to figure out what else I wanted to do next. Go to Nepal for a couple of years and um, work at a solar energy company. Try a little meditation out, hiking, trekking. When that kind of ended, and because of the politics there, came back to the States. Dead end sales job, not happy with that. Got an MBA, recruited into Cisco, economy crashed, was laid off. And it was sort of this moment of reflection where I looked back and I said, I've been trying so hard to fit my life into this mold of what other people think it's supposed to be. And the truth is, for a lot of people, it's not. Your career is going to take dips and turns, and you're gonna fail, and then you're gonna recover and try something else. And I think that's okay, and that's certainly what I've done.
And how did you cope? I mean, I've been, that story of being made redundant. You mentioned just there. I think a lot of people listening to this will have experienced that, but not everybody will cope in the same way. Not everybody will have the same mechanisms to cope. How did you cope with that, and what did you do?
Yeah, it was very painful. I mean, especially I think for men, but I'm sure many women feel the same way. That men typically identify their self-worth with their career success or their job. What I do for a living equals who I am. And so when that equation falls apart, it can really devastate your self-esteem. And one lesson I learned from that is I am not my job. And when the thing I do fails, it doesn't mean I'm worthless or not a good person. And so there was sort of this we're getting really psychological here, but we'll get into social media eventually. There was a very dark period of my life. I was depressed. I couldn't wake up. I would go for long hikes in the woods, and I had to just recalibrate my personality and say, I have value and things to offer the world, and it might not be working at Cisco, and that's okay. Like, I I'm still okay. But it took a long time to get through that, and it was little successes like discovering that I liked public speaking and going to the job clubs and sharing what I knew about social media, and being good at that sharing gave me back a sense of purpose and also a sense that I can do something well and be successful at it. And there was those little success. I wasn't getting paid for those speaking engagements, but people were benefiting from that, and that's what felt good.
And why the affinity, do you think, for social media? How did that come through?
I've always been an early adopter of technology. It just happens that social media was a great tool in my career. When I was getting my MBA, I used it. It was an international MBA, so I spent a lot of time in Asia, um, Shanghai, and then Kobe, Japan, and also Vietnam and some other countries. And I was able to use LinkedIn, for example, to set up meetings with very high level executives. And this was back in 2006. So long before they were at the 380 million user mark. Um, I remember in Saigon, in Ho Chi Minh City, I was able to meet with several top-ranking executives from IKEA who were just setting up there at that time. Um, and we sat down. It's like their driver pulls up with their Mercedes, which you can't even buy in Vietnam, but they had one.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so I just began to realize, and certainly when I was doing the job search part of the MBA, LinkedIn was the most valuable thing I had. It was how I was getting in touch with alumni and um, setting up conversations with potential new bosses, or even just interviewing people in industries that I might be interested in, but I didn't know. And God, I couldn't imagine doing my career without LinkedIn as a tool. And as when I was laid off, I of course fell back onto those skills and with great success. A lot of the other folks who were made redundant, there was high unemployment at that time in Portland, Oregon, and of course around the rest of the country and the world as well. Um, and the employment office told me, you're not going to get a job interview for 6 months, so you better just, put your nose down, do the work, and wait.
Mm-hmm.
I was using LinkedIn and getting job interviews in a week.
Wow. Okay.
A very competitive time in our economy. So it worked for me, and I was just simply deciding to share what was working for me with others.
And there was a figure I saw. I think it was a JobVite figure, which says it's about 95 or 90. I should know this. I'm a recruiter after all, but it's
Yeah.
about 95% of recruiters are using LinkedIn. Um, Were you getting these job offers through recruiters, or were they direct employers?
It was both. So, and I think that statistic is 96%.
Mm-hmm.
And that was done in 2014, that particular study. Well, several years later, imagine where that number is now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're somewhere around 98%
Mm-hmm.
of recruiters. So, yes, absolutely. I was able to talk to not just recruiters, but also hiring managers and also parallel folks who were doing similar things that I was doing. In fact, I was interested in a software company, startup, found them on LinkedIn, got in touch with one of the technical salespeople, had a great conversation, was referred into the job, had an offer on the table. So, yeah, everybody and everybody is using LinkedIn at the white collar professional level.
And just before we get into the LinkedIn questions,
Yeah.
obviously, one of the big things for me, at least, anyway, on a selfish note, is that I gained a lot of my insights from your book, the Dummy series that you did.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was that and in fact that's the only Dummy series book that I know of that covers what it does, the social media elements. Was that something
Yeah.
that came back through your own sort of
Yeah, here's my copy
here's a
of it.
copy? And
Dog-eared and
very
there's a
useful. I use it as a reference book, or use it as a reference book at the time. And what I'll do is as well is
yeah.
I'm going to share a link with everybody so they can have a look and pick it up for themselves. I strongly recommend looking at that because it's, as much as social media changes, there's still so much that's relevant and there's so much that can be useful because,
Yeah.
social media is imperative to anybody's job search. But how did that book come about, Josh?
I had written about 250 blog posts by the time I wrote the book proposal. So I proved a few. When you're writing a book, you need to prove a few things to your publisher. One, you can write. Number two, you can take edits well. A lot of authors are very territorial. Like, don't tell me what to say. But that doesn't work, especially with a brand like For Dummies, because they have a very specific style, and you need to be able to take edits well. And the third one is that you've got to show a market. Well, I was able to do all of those things by having a blog. For a couple of years, a lot of articles. So they knew I could write. I wrote all these articles. They knew I knew what I was talking about. How do you BS 250 articles about a topic? You got to know what you're talking about. And finally, I had pretty decent readership even back then. So I proved market value. Therefore, it was fairly easy to convince them that they should get behind the title. And to be honest, they didn't even know that they wanted to publish the book. Like, they didn't know this was a thing until using LinkedIn, networked into Wiley and
Wow.
using some, yeah. So, I mean, you got to walk the talk, eat the dog food, etc. And so forth. So my first contact was not the right person. It was a silly email with my ideas and kind of vouching for myself. And that was passed along a couple of times until finally somebody in the acquisitions department for the For Dummies group uh, emailed me back. It took about 3 months, and said, "Look, it's not on our list of books, but we think this would sell. So, are you still interested?"
Excellent. So, like you said, walking the talk, using LinkedIn to actually uh, uh, communicate with Wiley in order to write the book about LinkedIn and social media. That's pretty amazing. And
Sure.
yeah, I'm with you all the way in terms of using LinkedIn to find a job, to make contacts, etc.
Yeah.
I think one thing that a lot of people, in my experience, find probably confusing, and I suppose in some ways it's similar with the CV. They find it difficult to, or find it confusing to really know strategies or at least an approach for setting up their profile so that it can be attractive. Not just in the tone of voice, but in terms of the keywords. What are your biggest points of recommendation for setting up your profile so it's successful?
There's been several interesting studies that have come out over the years about where your eyes go on they put on these retina tracking devices, and they can actually see where your eyes focused on the screen. And so there's three main parts to this. So with a LinkedIn profile, and the reason why your profile is important is it increases the likelihood that somebody's going to get back to you when you network with them, or that you'll show up on search results. But search results are also incumbent upon the size of your network. So there's more to that strategy. In any case, no matter what strategy you have, you need a good profile, or else it won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Keywords are good, and there's some good tools to use. In fact, I just spoke with the founder of a website called jobscan.co.
Mm-hmm.
.co, and what they do is on the left side, you copy and paste the job you actually want, and on the right side, you copy and paste your LinkedIn profile, and you hit analyze, and it actually tells you if you're on the mark.
Seriously, wow,
Yeah, it's very powerful, and it'll tell you what keywords you're missing.
crazy. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
great tool.
jobscan.co. Did you say?
Jobscan.co.
Mm-hmm.
Co.
Okay.
So keyword research is fairly technical and probably the simplest part of this process. The hard part is, number one, knowing what to say about yourself. So personal branding really has to be the first step. Because when you're thinking about what do I put in my headline, or so back to those retina studies, it's your profile photo that people look at first. You need a photo, and it has to be good. Number two, your headline is the second thing they read. So there's ways to construct that headline that are effective. For example, one extreme is you just put your job title. And one example I have when I do this training is I show a senior software quality assurance engineer out of San Francisco, and his title is Senior Software Engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Location, San Francisco. And my
Right.
question is, how many senior software engineers are in Silicon Valley right
Quite
now?
a few.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he has not differentiated himself at all. And so, yeah, it's good you need to have your job title in there, or else a recruiter like you is not going to know what box to put him in. However, I need something more, right? I'm going to need to differentiate him somehow. So some kind of result that he's had, some kind of specialization that he's focused upon, or industry, or some kind of unique way of telling his story, what makes him different from everybody else. Also needs to be in that 120 character space of the headline.
Yeah. Not
Now
easy.
the other extreme is you just have some fancy schmancy stuff in the headline, and a recruiter is not going to know what it is you do.
Mhm.
So there's sort of these two extremes, and you've got to find yourself in the middle with your headline. And the third part of a good profile is the summary section, and that takes some time to work through. But in fact, my company, we use 12 templates. When depending on the type of story we're trying to tell, the person's career, how circuitous it was, or how focused or non-focused it is, we're going to use one of the 12 templates, customize that template, tell the story in an effective way. Of course, we don't have time to go through all 12 of those styles of writing a summary. However, I can give you 4 questions to answer. And when you answer those questions, those are your summary. That's a very good, solid, basic summary.
Excellent.
So the first question is, who are you? Okay, and this is not a Zen koan. I remember asking this question in a group of funny career professionals there. They've known each other for years. And so I said, okay, who are you? And some guy in the back raises his hand and he's like, he must have been in his late 60s. And he goes, that's a question I've been trying to figure out for the last 35 years.
Don't put on your LinkedIn profile.
I'm like, no, dude, it's like, it's very simple. I am a senior software developer focused on quality assurance for healthcare IT systems, right? That's it. That's the answer to that first question. So if you can't answer that question in a sentence, you need to do some more work.
Yeah. Another 30 years for him then, maybe.
No, he was pulling my leg. The second question is, how do you help? Who and how do you help them? So, it's sort of like, what do you do for somebody else or for your target? Excuse me. So, for example, for me, I help job seekers who are really struggling, particularly when they're sending, resumes out and they're not getting anybody calling them back, or they're submitting apply from job boards, and they're getting, sorry, but you're not qualified, automated emails coming back. And so that's frustrating. How do you make that turn? So I would answer that question. So the first question I would say is, I'm a social media strategist specializing in helping job seekers find work. Question number two, who do you help and how do you help them? Is, if you're having a really hard time getting employers and job opportunities to get back to you, I can show you how to use LinkedIn and social media more strategically to get into a job interview by next week.
Excellent.
So the second question is what you're offering to that reader.
Sure.
Of the file. Third question is quite hard. What makes you the best at what you do? Now, a lot of people balk at that because we're so conditioned to not brag.
Absolutely.
But you do have to ring your bell, and a recruiter is not going to know how you're different if you don't tell them. And I think there's a real fine line. I could brag or just simply tell you what accomplishments I have. And I think there's a difference, and that's very palpable. So one way to go about answering this question is to think about a time in your career that you've been very successful, and then describe in that short 1 or 2 sentences what role you played in that success.
Right.
And that's it.
And this is good. Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, it's good in the sense that I think what a lot of people tend to do is they just tend to regurgitate stuff onto their LinkedIn profile. And
Yes.
This is like just a step-by-step process. And you said there are 4 steps, right? You were talking
One more
about
question.
One
yeah.
more question.
The last question is the call to action. If you're looking for a quota retiring salesperson to join your organization, please give me a call at this number.
Right.
Very simple call to action.
And I suppose if it didn't have a number or didn't want people to call you, you could leave an email or something like that.
Yeah. Something that you want, you're asking someone to take an action, right? You're basically saying what you want and what you want someone to do about it.
Right.
I'm looking for career opportunities within project management in construction. Please contact me for a resume via LinkedIn. That would be fine too, right? And of course, if you're not actively looking for a job, if you're a passive job seeker, so if you're gainfully employed and you're open to opportunities, of course you wouldn't be that aggressive.
Sure.
You might say, happy to talk to anybody who's interested in, this project or that project.
Okay. And talking about, so I know again another thing that people tend to struggle with when it comes to LinkedIn profiles, or they may probably be thinking that, okay, my LinkedIn profile is an extension of my CV, or is in fact a CV. And you see a lot of people just
Yeah,
copy that stuff out of their CV and dump it into their
yeah.
LinkedIn profile. Would you say that? I mean, for me, it's a big no-no. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, for you and me, we're in the career space, right? And so it's kind of like, of course, it's not the same thing, but for someone who's like been employed, this is their first time back in the job hunt. This is kind of a new thing. I could totally understand why the knee-jerk gut reaction is copy and paste my professional statement from my resume, my CV, and put
Sure.
it into LinkedIn. And of course, that doesn't work. And maybe I can enumerate kind of why I think it doesn't work, and you can tell me if you agree. First, I think that the medium is the message. Okay, so from Marshall McLuhan's title of the same, back in, I think, 69, 68, he published it. And one of the things he said was that uh, the, the, the things we use are somehow a psychic extension of our senses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for example, um, like a record player is this psychic extension of our ears, and a wheel on a car is
Mm-hmm.
this extension of our feet.
Yeah.
And so the medium we use is actually some kind of withdrawing or externalization of who we are as people. And of course, our CV is an extension of our professional background, of
Sure.
what we've accomplished in the past. What I would say is social media is an extension of your personality now,
Mm-hmm.
what you can offer now. And so as such, you're going to have more personality in there. You're going to write from a first person narrative, meaning get rid of the formal he, she, second person
Yeah.
stuff or third person stuff that most CV language requires, because they're old, antiquated documents, and that's the tradition. But we don't have that tradition in LinkedIn. So here's what I mean. So when you're sitting in front of somebody, let's say, so if you see me here, I'm sitting here,
Mm-hmm.
and the person I'm having coffee with is right here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's now we're having a conversation, coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's also the distance between my face and the screen.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so just from a pure mechanics point of view, the screen is somebody sitting in front of
Yeah.
me.
I get
When I
it.
see their picture, their voice is in my head. And so if I was having coffee with somebody and they're like talking about themselves in the third person, they're nuts. Schmiegel.
You know, that demonstration you just gave me actually brings to life that whole idea of somebody being totally not speaking in the third person. I see what you mean.
Look, and I know that culturally, Europe is a little bit more formal than the U.S., but I still think, despite that, I still think you want to use a first person, less formal type of language on your LinkedIn profile.
And then with that, and I agree with what you've said there, and first person, you know, using, I think a lot of people, yeah, over here, I would say a lot of people avoid using the I's and the me's in their CV, rightly so. But yeah, the LinkedIn profile is an extension of your person, I suppose, and
Yeah, absolutely.
is a mini conversation with the prospective
Yeah.
employer or contact. So yeah, I'd agree with that. And then in terms of keywords, people, a lot of people get wrapped up in keywords, whether it be recruiters or job seekers. And I think sometimes is there too much focus on keywords where LinkedIn is concerned, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's important to do the keyword research, but honestly, it takes you half an hour. You put the keywords in the right places, your headline, your summary, your job descriptions, and you shouldn't really worry about it after that.
Mm.
I think if you're going to spend any energy or any time on this stuff, it should be on networking. Honestly, it's like I think we just get so wrapped around the axle around, oh, it's a tool and technology and it's going to do all this great work for us, and that's a total fallacy. And it has been. Technology is not a cure for human problems. And so this is really a relationship issue. Looking for a job and networking are synonymous, and it's a human problem, not a technology problem. Once your profile is keyword infused and it reads nicely and it tells your story in a simple, clear narrative, your job is to network. and your job is to spend your time in reaching out to at least 3 people a day, sending those emails, setting up the phone calls, or the coffee meetings with the folks at companies you're interested in or within industries you're interested in. That's the main job.
And how, going back to your time in Japan, and maybe it's evolved since then. I'm sure it
Yeah.
has, given that you've written a book about all of this, and you also write LinkedIn profiles as well. How do you? What are your best recommendations for sort of reaching out to somebody that's a complete stranger, and
Yeah.
trying to get them to write back?
You can include a link to this, but actually on my blog, I've written several templates that viewers can just copy and paste
Oh,
and
brilliant!
customize.
Yeah.
And these are very effective. Now, keep in mind a few things. LinkedIn, of course, has grown, and so this whole idea of cold calling via InMail is quite prevalent, and so just keep in mind that your note may be one of many that these people are getting, and so it really is incumbent upon you to have done the research and to know who you're talking to, and make your message clear and professional and not spammy, or else you probably will be blocked. So you got to do it right. That's why I provide templates. I think that they're effective in that. Uh, but you also have to be consistent with your efforts to network. It's not something you do once a week and then wonder why nothing has happened. It's a numbers game in some way.
Hmm. And as well as that, talking about the numbers, I mean, I always say to people, you want to try and generate, eventually have about 2 or 3 offers on the table from all your networking, all the sort of first round interviews that you've done. With the networking, how, I suppose, just a rule of thumb, how many people generally would you contact to get as many meetings set up as you need to?
If you can fill your calendar up.
Hmm.
And if you're currently not working, what else are you going to do? I
Sure.
mean, the best use of your time is meeting new people, or deepening the relationships of your professional contacts you already have.
Hmm. Okay. And then when it comes to another thing that I think perhaps people struggle with is, again, the confusion here lies with the CV. Is with the CV, people tend to put literally sometimes every single job that they've done,
Yeah,
essentially. You know,
yeah.
um, is there a rule of thumb with your LinkedIn profile in terms of the number of jobs that you need to put on there include?
It, I think probably from the experience section part of LinkedIn and your CV is probably the most parallel, because I mean, tell me this, as a recruiter, if you're trying to fill a role and someone has every single freaking job they've ever had, completely unrelated to the role they're going for, like dishwasher at an Italian
Yeah, yeah,
restaurant when I was
yeah.
in high school, you're like, dude, just like
You don't need all of that.
reduce. So I think the same rule of thumb is like, don't go back more than 20 years. Keep the descriptions of what you've done consistent with what you want in the future.
Hmm. And again, this is back to keywords, and a big question I get asked is people's ability to get found. And again, like I said to you before, people get wrapped up in the keywords. But are there other things that people can do? So I know that obviously LinkedIn has an algorithm, but are there other things that people can do in order to improve their chances of being found above their competitors?
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. So, yeah, keywords is the platform. Like a keyword infused, well-written LinkedIn profile is the bare minimum to get started.
Sure.
That's your ticket. If you want to start popping up in recruiters' search results, here's the secret. And some people will disagree with me on this because it is a little controversial, but I
Right.
stand by my opinion.
Uh huh. Can't wait to hear
Um,
this one.
you want a large network. You
Right.
want a large network because the more people in your first degree network, uh, the higher chance you will show up when they do a search, because search results show up based on order of relationship.
Right.
So if you have every recruiter in your industry
Hmm.
as your first degree network and they're looking for you, you will show up. And so one of your aims is to strategically grow a large network.
Hmm. And then following on from that, then I suppose if you're a, I don't know, a software engineer in the, I don't know, renewable energy space, would it
Yeah.
follow to sort of follow recruiters that specialize in that area, or follow employers that specialize in that area? Would it? Is that what you're saying?
I would ask every recruiter in that space to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Every recruiter, wow.
Everyone you could find. Uh, Everyone you can find. And they're not going to say no. Recruiters also want to have large networks
Yeah.
because it makes it easier when they're looking.
Absolutely, yeah.
You'll never find a recruiter saying, "I don't know you." So the risk of that ever happening is minimal. So you could go to LinkedIn Advanced People Search, type in recruiter, change the industry to renewable energy or probably energy. I don't think they have a sub classification. So you can find, and then you can choose a location. So, if it's energy recruiters in London, click go. That's a very easy search with LinkedIn. You might get 300 or 400 people. Um, just go down the list, man.
Mm-hmm.
Connect, connect, connect. It will pay dividends down the line.
No, I can see how it would. I can see how it would because I mean, obviously, I've searched for lots of people on LinkedIn myself, so I can see the rationale behind what you're saying there. Certainly, but I think the message is it requires a lot of work. It's not going to happen overnight. The other thing that I found, I don't know. Again, you know more than me because I think I've got my head in searching rather than actually studying LinkedIn as much as you do. But what
Mhm.
I've found is for example, the more that you network or the more active you are,
Mhm.
um, or I don't know if it used to be like this, but the more active you are in the networks, in the groups, for example, is the more likely you are to get found in searches. Is that still the case? Has it ever been the
I have
case?
not seen any studies. I haven't even heard any anecdotal evidence to support that.
Right. That's my
So
theory then.
it's a theory, and it's certainly plausible. But I'm not going. I don't know. I don't really know. Certainly, being active in groups is not going to hurt you,
Hmm.
but I do not know if it affects your search result.
Okay. And then just moving slightly, I don't want to move too much away from LinkedIn, but
Mhm.
given how much time we've spent talking about it and the statistic that 96% statistic that we mentioned at the beginning, the
Yeah.
job right statistic, is LinkedIn then, would you say, the most, I suppose, powerful source of getting a job and contacting with potential employers, would you say?
I would say it's the highest leverage tool
Okay.
for that. Yeah.
And then just moving forward, I know that LinkedIn now are starting to. So, for example, there's LinkedIn for Good. I don't know
Yeah.
if you followed
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
Is this some sort of indication that LinkedIn is changing some way? I suppose let me ask a broader question. What do you think is the future for job seekers with where LinkedIn is concerned? Is there any particular things to look out for?
I believe that uh, more than 50% of LinkedIn's revenue comes from selling the recruiting product.
Hmm.
I also know that they're putting a lot of R&D into this idea of uh, it's not quite a social graph, but it's sort of like a professional graph. In fact, I think they call it a professional graph. And there's very interesting data coming from that. For example, they found, and to support what I said earlier, they found that in the US, cities where people have more connections have those cities fill jobs faster. So they've
Right.
actually found correlation between in areas where people have more larger networks
Hmm.
that there's more hiring going on.
Oh, okay.
And they know that because they can see the number of connections on average within a geographic area, and then they can also see how long jobs are opened before they're closed in those areas, and they know that there's a faster time to hire when you have more connections. There's some very fascinating research that's going to be coming out. I mean, the data points from an economics point of view are just fascinating, and I believe that LinkedIn wants to own that space for data. And I think this is consistent with how a lot of tech companies have grown over the years is at the end of the day, it's the data that they sell and can harvest. I don't like to use the term big data because I think it's overused now, but if they can start drawing these correlations, imagine the impact they could have on policy.
Absolutely.
On a global scale.
No, it's quite scary in terms of numbers as well, and how quickly it's growing. Like you said, they're gearing it towards, there's lots of revenue that recruiters are paying them. So it's a big indication of what's happening.
Yeah.
And just to as we start to wrap up, Joshua, there are some things that I've seen on LinkedIn that perhaps I'd say are big no-nos. You mentioned picture as being an important thing, and what would you say that the key things that you've seen or see on a regular basis that people are doing, which are really big no-nos for you?
If you don't have a picture, nobody's going to click on your profile. So that's one.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's like, we know that. They're 15 times more likely to click on a profile with a picture than without. So get your picture.
Wow.
And make that picture good, because and there's another study done, and I'll send you the link to that, which you can share.
Please.
Which has very interesting things about the quality of a picture. So we found out a few things. Black and white or color has no impact. The color of the background of the picture, absolutely no impact.
Mm-hmm.
Things that have an impact are the genuineness of the smile. So are you showing your teeth when you smile?
Really? Wow.
Are you squinting? So they call it a squinch. It's a technical term, I guess. So are your eyes narrowing and your teeth showing? I'm telling you, like, it's very, there's other things too about head, negative space around there. Also oversaturation and undersaturation. If it's too bright, you're going to lose some authority. If it's too dark, you're going to lose authority. So it has to be well edited. Also crop. So crop needs to be appropriate.
Yeah.
If you're too far away, like this, or too close, like that. So these are all factors that can have instant impact, whether or not someone's going to click your profile or not. It is competitive out there, and your picture is the first and most powerful touch point you have.
So what you're saying is we need a professional photographer to do our picture.
Yes. If at the very least, you can use a service, and I'll give you a link. There's several companies out there for very little money that will edit your picture so that it meets those criteria.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I always thought picture was important, and there's lots of psychology behind it, but by the sounds of it as well.
Huge.
And I think I was going by more about what people were wearing, how they're looking, or, if they're dressed inappropriately, but it sounds like there's much more to it than that.
Those are so nominal. The studies show they're so nominal. What you wear really has to do with your personal brand and the industry that you're going into.
You've got me a bit worried there. I need to start looking at my picture, I think. Maybe I'll use that link that you're going to send through to sort my picture out. Wow. So by the sounds of it, Head and Shoulders, the picture is the biggest mistake that you're finding with profiles.
I collect really ridiculous ones, by the way. It's a hobby of mine.
Gosh. Wow, you're totally into the LinkedIn stuff. And you have a LinkedIn service as well. Can you tell us a bit about your LinkedIn service, please?
Sure. So I have a team of 5 excellent writers. These are folks who have been resume writers for decades. They're at the top of their game. They've gone through my LinkedIn training, which is an extensive 14-hour certification course, so that I can guarantee the quality of the profiles they write. We do this for an international audience, so we've helped anywhere from college grads to executives, from South Africa to the UK to all over the States to Australia. It's 3 days for the first draft, and I think it's very affordable based on what's out there, and it's you're getting a specialization. So we do have some resume capability, but really our focus is getting those LinkedIn profiles to be so powerful that that's the least of your worries when you're looking for a job.
Are you seeing any? Is there any differentiation between? You mentioned places like Australia, US. Is there any differentiation in style, or is it generally similar, quite similar across the board?
It is a little bit more formal in the UK and in Europe. In fact, we had an executive from Paris, quite a senior level. I believe he was either a CEO or COO of a large company, and yeah, the style we provided for him was a little bit more formal. The way we told his story was a little bit more oriented towards the executive, right? Whereas we worked with someone who was going into customer service for hospitality for hotels, and there you're going to show a little bit more energy, some more passion. You're going to be a little bit more casual in the telling of those stories.
Yeah.
So, and that was somebody in the States. So of course, there's a little bit of a cultural difference. And we're very sensitive to that. In fact, I have a writer who's an American, but she lives in Indonesia, and has a European husband, and
That's
so
useful.
she's
She's got
very
all of the
international.
different bases covered there, by the sounds of it.
I have a writer who's fluent in Spanish, and we can do Spanish profiles as well.
Oh,
So
excellent.
yeah.
And then what does the future look like for you, Joshua? What's it looking like for you?
Well, I'm really I'm values oriented, and so as long as I'm helping people, and I see that what I'm doing is helping people find work, I'm going to keep doing it. So the LinkedIn profile writing is definitely there. Also, kind of the back end systems that I've developed to manage that part of my business. I put a lot of work into that. I can manage up to 10 contractors or more, all hitting a 3-day deadline, being able to audit, provide high quality editorial and quality control on all of the cases. And so anyone who comes in is going to have complete oversight through a workflow that I've set up. And so those back-end systems I'm making available for resume writing companies if they want to kind of get my secret sauce as well. So, all aspects of what I do, I really, I'm very mindful about, and try to do the best that I can.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. It's been great, Joshua, having you on here, and we'll, as I said, I'll post some links. Please send those links through so I can share them with everybody across the world, and also I'll be sharing your book as well. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll look out for you in the future, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, Alex. It was a pleasure.
Nice one.